जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यामुनतीर वनचारी यामुनतीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यामुनतीरा वनचारी यामुनतीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadip Mayapur Dham ki jai, Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai, Ganga Mayi ki jai, Yamuna Mayi ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 3, Text number 22. Etavan eva lokesmin puṁsāṁ dharma para smritaha bhakti yogo bhagavati tan-nāma-grahaṇādibhi etavaneva lokesmin puṁsāṁ dharma para smritaha bhakti yogo bhagavati tan-nāma-grahaṇādibhi etavaneva lokesmin puṁsāṁ dharma para smritaha bhakti yogo bhagavati tan-nāma-grahaṇādibhi etavaneva lokesmin puṁsāṁ dharma para smritaha bhakti yogo bhagavati tan-nāma-grahaṇādibhi. Grahaṇādibhi tavaneva lokesmin puṁsāṁ dharma para smritaha bhakti yogo bhagavati tan-nāma-grahaṇādibhi. I think they're there, but they're small. Yeah. Anybody else? Tan-nāma-grahaṇādibhi. Ross? Oh, Dharmaraj. Tavaneva lokesmin puṁsāṁ dharma para smritaha bhakti yogo bhagavati tan-nāma-grahaṇādibhi. Anybody on Zoom? Nobody on Zoom. Okay. Etavan, this much. Eva, indeed. Loke asmin, in this material world. puṁsāṁ, of the living entities. Dharma, the religious principles. Paraha, transcendental. Smritaha, recognized. Bhakti yoga, bhakti yoga or devotional service. Bhagavati, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not to the demigods. Tat, his. Nama, of the holy name. Grahana adibihi, beginning with chanting. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Devotional service, beginning with the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, is the ultimate religious principle for the living entity in human society. Purport. As stated in the previous verse, Bhagavatam, real religious principles, are Bhagavat Dharma, the principles described in Srimad Bhagavatam itself or in Bhagavad Gita, the preliminary study of the Bhagavatam. What are these principles? The Bhagavatam says, Dharmah projatakaitavotra. In Srimad Bhagavatam, there are no cheating religious systems. Everything in the Bhagavatam is directly connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhagavatam further says, Savai puṁsāṁ paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokṣaje. The supreme religion is that which teaches its followers how to love the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is beyond the reach of experimental knowledge. Such a religious system begins with tan-nāma-grahaṇa, chanting the holy name of the Lord. śravaṇaṁ, kīrtanaṁ, viṣṇoḥ, smaraṇaṁ, pāda-sevanam. After chanting the holy name of the Lord and dancing in ecstasy, one gradually sees the form of the Lord, the pastimes of the Lord, and the transcendental qualities of the Lord. This way one fully understands the situation of the personality of Godhead. One can come to this understanding of the Lord, how he descends into the material world, how he takes his births, and what activities he performs, but one can know this only by executing devotional service. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, bhaktya mam abhijanati, simply by devotional service, one can understand everything about the Supreme Lord. If one fortunately understands the Supreme Lord in this way, the result is tyaktva dehum punarjanma naiti. After giving up his material body, he no longer has to take birth again in this material world. Instead, he returns home back to Godhead. That is the ultimate perfection. Therefore, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 8:15, Mamupete punarjanma dukhalaya mashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gataha. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. Om ajnanatimidandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha nama shreshtam manamapi shachiputramatra swarupam rupam tasyagrajam urupuri mathurim goshtavatim radha kundam girivaramaho radhika madhavasham prapto yasya pratita kripaya Shri Gurum tam natosmi vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Bharijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamsha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So read the translation again. Devotional service, beginning with the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, is the ultimate religious principle for the living entity in human society. Okay. So we're continuing our discussion on the discussion. between Yamaraj and the Yamadutas after the deliverance of Ajamila. So this verse is describing devotional service, and devotional service specifically in relation to other processes of spiritual realization. So I'll kind of approach the whole thing at a distance and then, kind of move in that direction. So I guess the beginning point, the basis of everything, is that living entities in general are purpose-driven. It's not that living entities act without any reason. It's not that everything is just completely random, and that souls are just doing things with no rhyme or reason. But that actually all living entities, with whatever action they perform, whatever thoughts they have, etc., it's all for a purpose, for a specific purpose that they have in mind. And of course, there's many debates on ultimate purpose, on what the actual purpose of life is. People say all kinds of things, so especially here amongst psychologists, that they'll say that you have to have some sense of purpose, and this will help your psychological well-being, as if purpose is just something you can kind of accept and reject whimsically. Like having a purpose in life is just a tool to become happy, or it's just some kind of insignificant thing. Time out. Oh, that mic's better. Okay.
Just turn it on.
Hare Krishna. But basically speaking, for the vast majority of living entities, purpose in life boils down to mitigating distress and increasing pleasure. And whatever, even amongst sophisticated humans, all of these different discussions about the purpose of life, and should I have a family, should I not have a family, should I go to school, should I have a career, what career should I have? It basically boils down to the basic desire of the living entity to increase their pleasure and to mitigate their suffering. So then the question comes up, why is there suffering? And Krishna in Bhagavad Gita answers this question. He says, Mamaivaṁsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manashashan indriyani prakritisthani karshati. That the living entities within this material world are, Krishna speaking, my parts and parcels, and they're struggling very hard in this world due to the influence of the mind. So because the living entity has a material body and has a material mind, and identifies with it, to that extent the living entity will suffer in this material world. And it was Jada in his teachings to Maharaj Rahugana. He mentions how this road that, because of course Jada was carrying him on a palanquin, and there was ants and stuff like that, and he was moving out of the way so as to not step on bugs or ants. And then of course Maharaj Rahugana got very angry, and anyways, the whole thing. So one of the things that Jada Bharat says in the course of his teachings to Maharaj Rahugana is that this road here that we're walking on is very bumpy. There's all kinds of rocks, there's all kinds of things, pebbles, which can hurt the feet. It's a very bumpy road, but good thing that and he says, but if I accept this path as mine, if I accept that yes, this is my path, then I'll feel all the bumps. Then I'll accept with it all the bumps and the pebbles and the rocks and everything, and I'll feel pain. I'll understand. I'll think that my path is very bumpy. So the basic problem of the material world is that the living entities they have a material body and they're identifying with it, and the material mind. And so whatever difficulties the body goes through, and the body is a place of difficulty naturally, whatever difficulties the body goes through and the mind goes through, the living entity accepts that this is my difficulty. And so the vast majority, 99.9 probably, 99.999% of all living entities are basically on this level. They're stuck in this level of it's given the 5 koshas. Kosha means like levels or layers. Annamoya kosha, pranamoya kosha, and manamoya kosha. So annamoya kosha is basically, my purpose is find food. And then the next level above that is pranamoya kosha. Why am I finding food? I'm finding food in order to sustain my life. And this is real happiness, to sustain life. And then manamoya kosha is actually, no, there's another element, which is emotional well-being. Why am I sustaining my life? So I can have some kind of mental pleasure, the mental platform. So the vast majority of living entities are on these 3, stuck basically within these 3 levels. Even sophisticated, like I said, sophisticated human beings. What are they thinking about? They're thinking about, how can I become happy within the mind? How can I find food? How can I sustain my existence? And all of human civilization, philosophy, art, all these different things, it's actually just for these 3 pretty base kind of things. And even the Vedic literatures acknowledge this. There's that verse in Bhagavad Gita, annad bhavanti bhutani, annad parjanyat anasambhavaha. What is it? Yagyad bhavati parjanyo, yagya karma samudbhavaha. So, from yagya, all living entities are sustained with food, with grains, and from grains come from rain. Grains come from rains, and rain comes from yagya, and yagya comes from performing one's prescribed duties. And then Krishna also mentions to Arjuna, Traigunya Vishya Veda, and this Traigunya Bhavarjuna, Nirdvandva Nitya Sattvasto, Niryoga Kshema Atmavan. That the Vedas, they mainly deal with, the majority of the Vedas deals with kind of this karma kanda kind of thing, getting, some kind of happiness, some kind of, sustaining one's life, creating good fortune for oneself. It's all kind of within the modes of material nature, like Krishna is saying here. Because, again, the vast majority of living entities are on that level. But there are some living entities who come to the conclusion, they're thinking, okay, I have all these things, I have food, I have my life, I have, mental equilibrium. I'm in a situation which should, produce mental equilibrium, but still I'm not happy. Still, I'm not satisfied. So then, this particular living entity comes to the level of vijnanamoy, trying to understand, is there some purpose? Vijnanamaya kosha. Vijnana means realized knowledge. Is there some kind of purpose that I'm missing besides just these 3 base things? And from here, we've seen, history has shown that living entities go in one of 2 directions. Either one, the living entity can say, okay, well, is there some purpose to life, and think about it and really ponder it and come up with all different theories, basically just to say that actually no, there isn't. There is no other purpose to life. That the purpose of life is actually, we've thought about it, we've run it, we've done all the calculations, and we've come to the conclusion that actually the purpose of life is just to enjoy pleasures within the mind, get food, and sustain your life. That's it. So then you get into hedonism, then you get, all different kinds of philosophies, like Darwinism too. You get Darwinism, that actually we're all just animals, and everything we do is just basically for survival, and that's the whole thing. So, the living entities can use this platform to elevate themselves. And the first, you could kind of say, rung on the ladder after this inquiry, it usually is some kind of shunyavad or mayavad. The living entity will think, okay, well, existence or existence within this world necessitates suffering, therefore I should just get rid of it. Either they say, let me get rid of my identification with it, or let me get rid of it altogether. In the case of the Buddhists just say, okay, to hell with the whole thing. Because anything which might resemble this material world necessitates suffering. So the Buddhists say, let's just, to hell with the whole thing. And in some ways it's very intelligent, actually. And Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, Janma mrityu jara vyādi dukkha doṣānu darshanam, that a symptom of knowledge is to understand that birth and death and old age and disease, that all these things are suffering. Dukkha doṣānu darshanam. One should perceive the suffering within them. And this is actually intelligent. And often, devotees and other spiritualists and religion in general is criticized for this. Like there was that interview with, I guess it was supposed to be a debate. There was a debate with Srimad Ted Patrick and Sri Dayananda Maharaj and everybody's favorite Ted Patrick and Sri Dayananda Maharaj and Balavanta Prabhu. And there was some other lady there with Ted Patrick, but within that debate, this lady who was with Ted Patrick, she said there was a lot of good quotes from that debate, but she said that how she said it was, I'm not so smart, I can't really speak in such high language and whatnot, but my issue with the Hare Krishnas is that basically they just live a life of dying. Their whole philosophy is that, this body is bad, this world is bad, everything is bad, because it's all temporary, we're all going to die, and it's just so negative. The whole philosophy is just so negative. But specifically, she said, they live a life of dying, which I thought was interesting, because, okay, you may criticize devotees and other spiritualists for living a life of dying, but the fact is that everybody's living a life of dying. Even the materialists are living a life of dying. So, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says that intelligence is to acknowledge it. We should acknowledge that we're living a life of dying. Not that we should live in denial and say, actually, no, I'm not going to die. Actually, everything that I have is permanent. And I should just try to figure out a good situation in this world, and then, who knows what goes on in the next world. Actually, I asked my mother recently, which my mother's she's a very nice lady, and she's very intelligent, actually, too, and good-natured. But I asked her, because she's, kind of getting old. Yeah, well, maybe, I don't know. She's not that old, but she mentioned to me how she's getting older. She told me that, and I said, just for the sake of conversation, I said, so how do you feel about that? And she said, anyway, I lived a good life, and I was like, okay, good. And then she said, I'm not afraid to die at all. And I said, okay. I said, why not? And she said, well, they say you go to a better place. You go to a better place, so I'm not so afraid. And then she said, and then I said, well, how do you know? And she said, well, nobody ever came back, so it must be a better place. So anyway, but yeah, the point is that one should acknowledge that death is coming. It's inevitable for everybody. And one should prepare for it. One should do something to prepare for it. And to prepare, one should know for sure what is to be done, what is not to be done, and where one's actions will take them, the consequences of their actions. And so this kind of discrimination, materialists don't have it. Matirna Krishna paratasvato va mito vipadyeta graha vartanam. That one who has made this griha vrata, they have a very solid determination to enjoy in the material world. It never comes up it never occurs to them. And even if somebody instructs them, they can't understand that actually the results of their activities of sense gratification is just suffering, and that everything that they have is temporary. Yasyatma buddhi kunape tridatuke sudika latrada shubhama ijjadi yatirtha buddhi salilena karhichij janeshvabhigyeshu sa eva gokaraha. That one who thinks that his wife and his children are permanently his own, that his body, which is composed of mucus, bile, and air, is him, and who thinks the land of his birth is worshipable, and who just goes to holy places to bathe and doesn't actually inquire about anything. Such a person, their intelligence is like a cow or an ass. They're not very intelligent. They have animal-like intelligence. But somebody who's pursuing the ultimate good should know what is to be done and what is not to be done. And the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and intelligent people in general can understand that conditional happiness brings suffering. That if your happiness is based on the conditions around you, you're going to suffer, because the nature of conditions is that they change. So if one wants real happiness, he should reject this conditional happiness. Just do away with it altogether. And there's many examples of this in the Bhagavatam, like we had at the beginning of the 5th canto, about a year ago. We were reading about Maharaj Priyavrata. And Maharaj Priyavrata, he was engaged, and he was a brahmachari, and he was engaged in austerities and bhajan at Mandara mountain. And then Lord Brahma came and convinced him, there's nobody to take charge of the world, so please become king. And he said, okay, fine, and he did it. But then eventually, he performed many great activities. He carved out all the oceans with his chariot. So many things. But at one point he realized, I think he ruled for like 100 billion years or something like that.
No, I think it was 99. No,
it was something like some absurd amount of time, from our perspective. And eventually he just realized one day, what am I doing here? I was a brahmachari, I was engaged in, austerities, and it was like, I think I've sufficiently, explored this realm. So then what did he gave it all up. He gave it all up, and he went back to Mandara Mountain and just picked up where he left off. And Bharat Maharaj too. Bharat Maharaj also, king of the whole world, gave it all up. Prithu Maharaj. So many examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam of people giving up, of devotees giving up this material conditional happiness. So the impersonalists also understand this point. The impersonalists understand that conditional happiness is not where it's at, so to speak. But the problem is that their understanding of the actual goal, and therefore their solution to the problem, is wrong. It's a misunderstanding. They think that the last platform of existence, which is Anandamaya, so there's Annamaya, which is just consciousness of let me get food. And then there's Pranamaya, which is consciousness, okay, I'm getting food so that I can sustain my life. And then there's the consciousness of Manomaya, that I'm sustaining my life in order to experience some kind of emotion, some kind of happiness. And then there's the platform of Vijnanamaya. Okay, none of these things made me happy. What's the actual purpose? And then there's Anandamaya. And Anandamaya is the final stage. And the impersonalists, they think that this Anandamaya, they think that it's like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, no shochati na kankshati, that the goal of life is just to be no lamentation, no desire, just brahmabhuta, just peaceful on this platform of peace. But the Vaishnava understanding is that the jiva actually, beyond just not experiencing suffering, actually has a capacity for positive spiritual bliss. And the jiva, just like in the material world, some people are trying to experience some kind of happiness, some kind of bliss. It's not just that people are trying to mitigate suffering. They're actually trying to find some kind of high, so to speak. trying to relish some kind of rasa. So people, for example, listen to music, or they'll listen to some song about two people who never existed doing things that never happened, or they'll listen to like I've brought up the example before, that like somebody who lives in like suburban, they'll live in like Rancho Bernardo or something like that, and they're listening to cowboy music. I actually know one person specifically, knew one person who they listen to like cowboy music, not because it has any actual relevance to their life, but it makes them feel like a cowboy, and they just like that bob, they just like the, and also so many people, they'll listen to like heavy metal, like satanic, like heavy metal. And they're living in, again, they're like going to like high school, in the suburbs, and they're living in like a gated community. But it makes them feel very dark and very like, mysterious. They want to feel some kind of rasa, So the Vaishnava understanding is that this is actually the svarup of the jiva, that this is actually a part of the nature of the soul. And so therefore, in perfection, this is actually still there. So the jiva's capacity to relish rasa must be engaged. Otherwise, there's this verse, yenyera vindakshava muktamaninas tvayasta bhavad avashuddha buddhayaha aruhya kritshrena param padam tadap padantyado nadata yuśravaṇaṁ, that the Maya bodies and the Shunya bodies and the yogis and whoever else, they're engaging in all these austerities. That's another thing. Their processes are so difficult. But they're engaging in all these just horrible austerities, like Hiranyakashipu is with his arms up like this, standing on his tippy toes, for so long, so year after year after year, and the ants are eating his body. Very, horrible, painful, like torturing the body kind of thing. And they engage in these austerities, and they think that I've reached the highest level. This is the crux of spiritual life. But actually, they have avishuddha buddhi, that their intelligence is impure. They don't have pure intelligence, and therefore, padantyado nadata yuśravaṇaṁ, they fall down from their position of imagined superiority, because they haven't experienced this rasa varjam rasopyasya param darshvanavartate. They haven't experienced a higher taste. They actually don't like it. They don't like to engage in all these austerities. They don't like to. Who would like something like that? Who finds pleasure in doing something like that? But just like they have this idea that, we also have the idea that spiritual life is it's poison in the beginning with nectar in the end. But they take that to a whole new level. That actually the whole thing is just awful. But then eventually you just snap, and it snaps you into some kind of spiritual realization. So anyway, relishing rasa. The jiva wants to relish rasa. Even in perfection, the jiva wants to relish rasa. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Dashamula Tattva, he states, Amnaya praha tattvam harimiha paramam sarva shaktim rasabdhim. That Krishna, he's Akhila Rasamrita Sindhu. That Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's the ocean of all rasas. So if one wants to experience rasa, if one wants to relish rasa, go to Krishna. Because Krishna, he's eternal. He's eternally relishing rasas. And not only is he eternally relishing rasas, meaning, that if one wants to relish rasa eternally, never-ending, he can do that with Krishna. But also, he's like a very deep ocean of rasa. So the rasas that one can experience with Krishna by engaging with him, it's more than what anybody can imagine. And so then, like Prabhupada states in this purport, how to engage with Krishna. Okay, we hear this, but how to engage with Krishna? Krishna says, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yashchasmi tattvataha tatto mam tattvato gyatva vrishate dad anantaram. That Krishna can be accessed only by bhakti. And this is actually the highest position. And not just the highest position, but it's the natural position. It's the highest position in relation to us, or in relation to the conditioned living entities, because the conditioned living entities are so low. But it's actually, the natural position, and this is confirmed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jivera Shwarup Hoy Krishna Nityadas. That the living entity, the jiva, his svarup, his own form, his natural state, is to be a servant of Krishna in devotional service. And therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite, second line. Vedyam vasavam atravastu shivadam tapatrayon mulanam. The purpose of the Bhagavatam is to uproot the suffering of the living entities. Not just like, for example, if you're picking weeds. If you're picking weeds, you don't just rip the weed, out. You have to take out the root, or else the weed will just grow back. So the purpose of the Srimad Bhagavatam is Vedyam Vastavam Atravastu Shivadam Tapatrayon Mulanam. Mula means root. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, it uproots the threefold miseries. How? Dharma projatakaitavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. By casting far away all forms of cheating religion, all kinds of religion which is averse to the conclusions of devotional service. Because this bhakti, it's axiomatically different from any other platform of existence, any other, even spiritual processes. Because the purpose or the platform that other spiritual processes or material processes or whatever they're acting upon the platform of one's personal pleasure, sense gratification. There's a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita to this effect, but I haven't memorized it. But devotional service operates on the platform of anukulyena krishnanushilanam, that it's only for the purpose of pleasing Krishna. That whatever one does is only for the purpose of acting favorably for Krishna's pleasure. Krishnanushilanam. So in order to do this, in order to enter into this consciousness, enter into this state of existence, it requires very pure consciousness. Therefore, even Lakshmi Devi, who's of course not impure whatsoever, but even Lakshmi Devi, she wanted to get access to Krishna's pastimes with the gopis in Vrindavan, but she couldn't, because her consciousness was different to that than the mood there in Vrindavan. So she couldn't access it. So if one wants to access devotional service, pure devotional service, specifically within our sampradaya, devotional service within Vrindavan, it requires very pure consciousness. And therefore Bhagavatam says, Kaler doshanite rajan asti heko mahatkuna kīrtanādeva krishnasya mukta sangha paramraje. That if one wants to achieve the highest level, first it says Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults. It's a completely unfavorable environment for executing practically anything, actually, but especially devotional service. It's unclean, everybody's dishonest, there's so much violence and so much suffering. But the one good asti heko mahatkuna, that there's one good quality in Kali Yuga, that kīrtanādeva krishnasya mukta sangha paramraje, that just by chanting the holy name of Krishna, kīrtanādeva krishnasya, one can achieve the absolute highest benefit, the highest abode, paramraje, that one can go there. So like this verse is saying, the process of devotional service, it begins with chanting the holy name, tan-nāma-grahaṇa. And this holy name is the means, practically the only means by which we make spiritual advancement. It's the main process that we do. Even if we do everything else very nicely, if we're not chanting the holy name properly, or if we're not making progress in the chanting of the holy name, our advancement will be extremely slow. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his Sri Nama Mahatmya, at the last section of Sharanagati, he describes that the holy name is the bud of the flower of divine love. Because it's stated also, Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shraddha Nitya Mukta Pinatvam Namanamino. The holy name is so powerful. Why? Because Pinatvam Namanamino, that the name and the named are non-different. And Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. And it's also the means by which we can relish rasa, Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, with Krishna. So this holy name is the bud of the flower of divine love. And when it's fully manifested, actually maybe I'll just read it, actually. There's a very nice translation of this song. I happen to have it on my phone here. It's not, actually I'll just read the whole translation. It's very, very nice. And it's not super long. It's Sri-Nama-Mahatmya. It's the last section of Sharanagati. My heart is like a desert, hot with the rays of the sun. This is my internal mental condition. The desire for temporary material things cannot satisfy me, because by nature they are death-producing. And not one or two desires have taken shelter and not one or two, but thousands of such death-producing desires have taken shelter in my mind. So my subconscious region is always burning. This is my condition. But somehow, by the grace of Sadhu and my Guru, the holy name of Krishna with its infinite prospect has entered through the holes of my ears and reached the plane of my heart. And there, with some peculiar hope, with infinite auspicious possibilities, it touched my heart with a new kind of nectar. New hope is aroused by that sound. Then by force it comes from the heart toward the tongue. Not by the endeavor of my tongue am I producing that sound. What came from the heart of a saint through my ear entered my heart, and that forcibly appeared on my tongue and began to dance. That is the holy name proper. It descends from above. The material tongue cannot produce it. Its source is above. And through an agent of the Absolute, it comes through the ear to the heart. From the heart it gathers some sympathy. Then the holy name of Krishna forcibly appears upon the tongue and begins to dance. With great force, that sweet sound comes to the tip of the tongue and begins to dance. The real effects of the divine name have been described here. If it is a real living name, the voice will be choked up. There will be shivering in the body. The legs will be unable to stand, and sometimes tears will flow in a current on the body. One's hair will stand on end, and sometimes the body will change color. The material mind and consciousness will fade away, and we may fall in a swoon. The whole body and mind will appear as if being attacked, shivering and influenced in many ways. Apparently, it may seem that so many troubles are created in the body and mind, but the real heart is overflowing with a particular kind of strange, sweet juice. Sometimes the devotee thinks, I am swimming in an ocean of nectar. My whole existence is submerged in an ocean of nectarian rasa. I am beside myself and cannot understand where I am. What is this? What is surrounding me? Am I going mad? Where is my past experience, my seriousness, my gravity? Where are they? I have been completely converted by a foreign element. I am a doll in the hands of a great force, which is so affectionate to me. I cannot ascertain how it is possible that by my faith I have entered this great unknown environment, and at last I find I am captivated. My entire being, within and without, has been captured and controlled by an especially sweet force. It is beyond description. I came to take shelter of him and accept him as my guardian, but now at his hands I am being dealt with in such a merciless and oppressive way. Still, I find everything is very pleasing beyond my experience. I cannot resist anymore. I am fully captured. So let my faith go anywhere because I cannot escape. I am captive in the hand of a sweet, loving friend. All my independence is gone, and I have no other choice but surrender. I find that he is an autocrat. He does whatever he wants. Since it is not possible for me to resist, I must surrender. No, I will cooperate and do whatever he wants. Meanwhile, I find that the holy name is like a blossoming flower, emanating wonderful sweet streams. The holy name contains so many sweet variegated forms of current within him. In different ways he is expressing himself. Sometimes he shows a peculiar type of color and form, and then disappears. So many charming aspects are revealed within, as he forces me to surrender at the base of that altar. He shows himself in a full-fledged form as he leads to Vrindavan to witness his Vraj Lila with Radha. I find myself in the midst of this uniquely sweet and loving abode. He says, "You see, I have so many wonderful things, and this is your home. I am not imagination, but concrete reality. You will find that this environment is very sweet and favorable, and you should live here. I see that he is exchanging a variety of loving rasas with his many devotees, and I find that a spiritual body has emerged from my previous one, and that I have a new, permanent place here in his service. I have such a new life I find here, that all considerations of my past life and experience has vanished, and my previous material life was a waste. Now I find that chanting the holy name gives me a new hope, a new prospect, a new encouragement. The name supplies whatever we want. All our internal hankerings will be fulfilled if we chant the name. The holy name is eternal, full of ecstasy, and it is the purest of the pure. I find that I have been completely converted, and now my innermost hankering is this. Let whatever is against this sweet name vanish forever from the world. Everyone should come here. I am ready to sacrifice my life to finish any opposition, so that everyone can easily, peacefully, and fearlessly enjoy this absolute, sweet, and blissful life. So, the holy name, by our faith and determination, specifically by our faith, Prabhupada mentions that in a purport in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that one who has serious faith that the holy name is non-different from Krishna, he's a pure devotee, and that he's fit to be heard from. So, to the extent that we can have faith and understanding that the holy name is non-different from Krishna, to that extent we can make spiritual advancement. And like Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, when the holy name is fully blossomed, the flower of the holy name is fully blossomed, the holy name will appear to us in his own form and take us by the hand and lead us to Vrindavan, so that we can be reinstated in our he'll show us our service in Vrindavan, he'll show us Radha and Krishna, he'll take us all the way to the top, from the bottom to the top. So just like a fisherman, when a fisherman, he throws his line, and the fisherman is on the top, he's on the surface, but he throws his line, and the line goes very deep into the ocean sometimes. And the fish grabs on, and the fish is taken up. Of course, the fish is being killed. But the analogy here is that the holy name is like the lifeline. Krishna's throwing us a life preserver. Krishna's all the way up, in Goloka Vrindavan, but he's throwing us down a life preserver. And this life preserver goes all the way to the bottom. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Mahavadanyaya. He instructed Advaitacharya when the Bengal devotees were leaving Nilachala after the Rath Yatra. He instructed Advaitacharya, give this holy name even to the Chandalas, even to the dog eaters, give it to everybody. So the holy name, it's supreme, it's purno shuddho nitya mukto. It's completely pure, always, eternally liberated, and just by chanting it, even the most sinful person can be liberated and attain the highest position of residence in Vrindavan. And it's so important that Jiva Goswami, and I think it's in the Bhakti Sandarbha, he states that all of the Nava-lakshana, the 9 processes of devotional service, should be preceded and followed by kīrtanaṁ, this process of devotional service. That's how important it is. And so if we take it up with great faith and determination, then like Prabhupada quotes in this purport, Mamupeti punarjanma, Mamupeti punarjanma dukkale mashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gataha. That if one takes up this holy name with faith and determination in devotional service to Krishna, then one will go back home, back to Godhead, guaranteed. Absolutely guaranteed. And one will never come back. One will never come back. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur was saying, that's only, you'll just forget about it. Just forget about the previous life, previous body, previous activities, as just a complete waste of time. So, yeah. I guess oh, it's late. Yeah, I'll finish there for sure. I guess we have 2 minutes for questions or something. If anybody has questions or comments or something. So, Prabhu.
I just wanted to see if you could mention...
You have a microphone, perhaps?
Yeah. Wait. I just want to see if you could mention the event you had yesterday when you were explaining the holy name to that one guy, the one gentleman.
Oh, yeah.
He snapped out of it.
I had this experience yesterday when I was on Books. Actually, I was thinking of mentioning it, but I actually forgot now. I had this experience yesterday. We were distributing books in Ocean Beach. It was a really, really rough day. It was a lot that happened. But there was this one guy, and I held the book out to him, and he was clearly intoxicated, and he was a little rough looking, you know. He wasn't homeless. He was just a little younger, probably in his 20s. He looks like he drank a lot, and he's definitely smoked cigarettes. He looked kind of aged, but I held out a book to him. I said, "Here you go, man. Check this out." And he just grabbed it and walked away. He came back a couple seconds later and said, "Actually, this is useless to me," and he put it down. And but then his friend, we were set up right out front of a store, so then he came back, you know, like maybe 10, 15 minutes later. His friend went in the store and he waited outside. And so anyway, he came up to the table again. He was asking me like kind of just silly questions. He said, he's from Brazil. He said, "So, you know, answer this honestly. Do they, like, what do they put in the food, like in the Hare Krishna food? Like do they put something in the food?" Anyway, I was just kind of talking with him. I said, "No, they don't." I said, and then he came up and he asked, again, he was drunk, so he just kind of asked this question, I think just out of his stupor. He wasn't so drunk, but anyway, he was just kind of trying to mess with us. And he said, what makes Hare Hare? And how I interpret it and how I answer the question is what makes Hare Hare? Because when you chant the holy name, Krishna's right there. That's what I explained. I said Krishna's non-different from his holy name, and if you chant the holy name of Krishna, the holy name of God, then you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait at all. Krishna's right there because he's non-different from his name. God is absolute. He's non-different from his name, and so just by chanting Hare Krishna, one can reawaken the original consciousness of the living being and experience supreme happiness. Forget about all their miseries and experience supreme happiness. And when I said that, he had this look on his face. It was almost like a child. It really was like a child. Like I just saw, like he was looking into my eyes. He was just staring into my eyes. And he was kind of smiling before, but his smile kind of slowly faded, and he was staring into my eyes. And he had this look on his face like a helpless child. Yeah, innocence. Like I saw past all of everything messed up. And he was just, it was almost like he was like internally like calling out for help, like help me, like please help me, you know? And he had this, and he just like looked at me kind of like with a straight face, you know? And just didn't say anything, and then he walked away. And his friend came out and he just walked away, didn't say anything. And as he was walking away with his friend, he kind of snapped back into it, you know? It was amazing. He snapped right back into it. And what was he doing? He was chanting with his friend. He went, Hare, 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 like that as he was walking away. So I thought it was kind of far out, especially just because of the face that he made and how it was like so clear to me that like something happened, like he heard something and it kind of like, you know, had some effect. And then as he walked away, he was kind of jokingly chanting Hare, Hare, Hare. So anyway, I thought it was kind of far out.
Let us know.
Yeah, let's see. But yeah, anyway, so yeah. So yeah, I'd like to meet you. So I guess we should end now. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Dharmo Harinam Sankirtana ki jai. I think so, yeah.